And I prayed about it, and I thought, I'm not missing that dedication in Jerusalem without the airplane that we have that I bought from Tyler Perry.
For many years, Pastor Kenneth Copeland has been one of the most recognized names in Christian ministry. He built a global platform, attracted millions of followers, and became one of the most talked-about televangelists in the world. But today, things do not seem to be going as smoothly as before. Is this the beginning of a major change? Or is there more to the story than people realize? What is really happening behind the scenes? Join us as we uncover the truth. Kenneth Copeland's family challenges and growing questions. In May of 2024, Kenneth Copeland suffered a ruptured appendix. He was rushed into surgery and spent nearly 10 days in the hospital over 2 separate stays. The situation drew attention because it involved the same man who had spent more than 50 years telling people that strong faith meant they did not need doctors. For decades, he encouraged believers to trust completely in faith during times of sickness. This event also came after what he had publicly declared on Christmas Eve of 2022. During that message, Kenneth Copeland confidently said that he would never get COVID of any kind because he lived by faith. Those words were heard by many people around the world. Yet, less than 2 years later, he found himself in a Texas hospital, undergoing emergency surgery as doctors worked to save his life. When Kenneth Copeland returned to the pulpit after recovering, he spoke about his experience in a lighthearted way. He shared that while he was still under anesthesia, he had been singing love songs to his wife, Gloria, and reciting verses from the book of Hebrews. Members of the congregation responded with polite laughter. However, the reality of the situation remained clear. His health scare reminded many people that age affects everyone and that the human body naturally grows weaker over time. At the same time, the teachings that had shaped his ministry for decades faced even greater public attention and scrutiny. Another important moment came in March of 2026. Kenneth Copeland participated in a long-form, one-on-one interview for the first time in more than 15 years. The interview lasted for over 2 hours and was conducted by evangelical podcaster Bryce Crawford. The choice of interviewer stood out because it provided a friendly setting for the conversation. At the same time, one noticeable absence remained. Kenneth Copeland did not return for another interview with Inside Edition, where he had previously faced tougher questions. While these public appearances were taking place, important leadership changes were also happening behind the scenes at Kenneth Copeland Ministries. His son, John Copeland, returned to a major leadership position. John had stepped down as Chief Operating Officer in 2018 following a highly publicized divorce. For several years afterward, he was listed only as a consultant. By 2026, however, the watchdog organization Ministry Watch confirmed that John Copeland had once again become the ministry's chief executive. His return placed leadership firmly back within the immediate family, strengthening the family's control over the organization. As these changes unfolded, Kenneth Copeland continued repeating a promise that has become one of his most recognizable personal claims. He has consistently said that he has a personal agreement with God, allowing him to live until the age of 120. As each birthday passes, that statement continues to receive attention from both supporters and critics. Meanwhile, the ministry itself appears to be preparing for future leadership changes, even though those changes have not been openly discussed during its broadcasts. The Copeland family has also experienced deep personal loss. In May of 2021, Kenneth and Gloria Copeland's great-grandson, Clark Meyer, drowned. His death was especially heartbreaking because he was part of a family widely known for teaching that speaking words of faith over loved ones brings God's protection. Despite the tragedy, the family chose to keep the loss largely private. There was no nationally televised memorial service and no major Sunday message explaining how the event fit within the ministry's long-standing teachings. For an organization that places great importance on the power of spoken words, the silence surrounding the death of the young boy became noticeable to many observers. Another difficult moment came in 2023 with the death of Marty Copeland. She had previously been well known as the public face of the family's wellness and fitness ministry. Through that work, she encouraged viewers to honor God by taking care of their physical health. By the time of her passing, she and John Copeland had been divorced for about 5 years. Kenneth Copeland Ministries did not release a formal statement to its donor community regarding her death. The news also received very little attention in mainstream media. As a result, many people continued asking difficult questions about healing and how those teachings applied within the ministry's own family. Even before these personal losses, signs of difficulty within the Copeland family had already become visible. John Copeland's divorce in 2018 affected more than his personal life. It also ended his role as the ministry's expected successor. After leaving his executive position, he spent several years away from the top leadership structure before eventually returning as chief executive. His sister, Kelly Copeland, who is known within the ministry as Commander Kelly through the Super Kid Academy, has also experienced more than one marriage. Looking further back into Kenneth Copeland's own life, he went through 2 failed marriages before marrying Gloria. This part of his personal history is not included on the official Kenneth Copeland Ministries biography page. Senate investigation and public controversies. In 2019, Kenneth Copeland faced one of the most talked-about public confrontations of his ministry. The reporter who confronted him was Lisa Guerrero from Inside Edition. The meeting took place at a small private airfield in Branson, Missouri. She was investigating the fleet of private jets that Kenneth Copeland Ministries had quietly built over the years using donor money. At the time of that interview, the ministry owned several aircraft. These included a Cessna Citation Bravo, a Cessna Citation X, and a Gulfstream 5 jet that Kenneth Copeland had personally purchased from filmmaker Tyler Perry. According to the Christian Post, the ministry had not only acquired the Gulfstream 5, but was also asking supporters to provide an additional $19.5 million. That money was intended for aircraft upgrades and the construction of a brand new hangar. The request for those millions of dollars was directed toward many working-class supporters who had been encouraged to believe that sending in their last paycheck would bring them a 100-fold blessing from heaven. This made the growing collection of expensive aircraft an even greater point of public discussion. Several years before that airport confrontation, Kenneth Copeland had appeared on his own television program with fellow televangelist Jesse Duplantis. During that broadcast, they discussed why they believed they could not travel on commercial airlines. Kenneth Copeland stated that people could not get into a long tube with a bunch of demons and described it as deadly. Jesse Duplantis agreed, while Copeland laughed during the conversation about flying with ordinary passengers. When Lisa Guerrero approached Kenneth Copeland at the Branson airport, she was prepared to ask him about those comments. However, when she questioned him on camera, he denied ever making the statement. He firmly insisted that he had never said those words and told her not to claim that he had. The problem with that denial was that the original video already existed. The remarks had been made publicly during a broadcast produced by his own ministry, and many people had already watched the footage before the airport interview took place. As the conversation continued, the exchange became even more unusual. Kenneth Copeland repeatedly addressed Lisa Guerrero with terms such as sweetheart and baby. Rather than directly answering every question, he attempted to change the tone of the conversation. At one point, he even took her hand and tried to pray for her while they stood together on the airport tarmac. Guerrero continued asking whether it was appropriate to use donor money to purchase and maintain a Gulfstream 5 jet. Kenneth Copeland responded by saying that the matter was none of her business. That response became one of the most discussed moments from the interview because it reflected his unwillingness to explain or defend the ministry's financial decisions during the public confrontation. The same pattern of responding with displays of authority instead of detailed explanations became highly visible during the early months of the coronavirus pandemic. On the 29th of March 2020, Kenneth Copeland appeared before television cameras, stretched out his hand, and declared that he was personally executing judgment on COVID-19. During the broadcast, he also demanded that a vaccine come immediately. Only a few days later, he appeared again and blew air toward the camera, while claiming that his breath was destroying the coronavirus. His wife, Gloria Copeland, had also attracted widespread attention earlier. In the early part of 2018, during one of the deadliest flu seasons in nearly 10 years, she told viewers that flu season was not even real. She also said that Jesus had already given the world the flu shot. Later estimates from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention showed that around 52,000 Americans passed away during that same flu season. Because Kenneth and Gloria Copeland had a large national audience, their statements about illness and medicine received significant public attention. Critics argued that they were encouraging viewers not to trust medical treatments that were intended to protect people's health. Years before the pandemic, Kenneth Copeland had already become the subject of a major government investigation. In November of 2007, Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, who was serving as the ranking member of the Senate Finance Committee, sent formal letters to 6 of the country's best-known televangelists. Kenneth Copeland was among those selected for investigation. The other ministries included Benny Hinn, Joyce Meyer, Creflo Dollar, Eddie Long, and Paula and Randy White. Senator Grassley requested straightforward financial information. He wanted to know who served on each ministry's board of directors. He also requested information about executive salaries, the cost of private jets, and the location of each ministry's financial records. Eventually, 3 of the 6 ministries cooperated with the investigation by providing the requested information. The other 3 refused to cooperate throughout the entire process. Kenneth Copeland was among those who declined to fully participate. The official response came from Eagle Mountain International Church, the legal church organization that holds much of Kenneth Copeland's ministry together. The church stated that it had cooperated as much as possible without violating privacy and association rights protected under the United States Constitution. In practical terms, the ministry refused to identify the 10 members serving on its own internal board. Even when responding to a sitting United States senator conducting an official investigation, the organization would not reveal the names of the individuals overseeing its leadership. The Senate staff eventually completed its review, and the final report was released on the 6th of January, 2011. Despite the ministry's resistance, several financial details became public. The report revealed that the Copeland parsonage outside Fort Worth was an 18,000-square-foot mansion. The property had been appraised at $6.4 million and sat on 25 acres of land. The questions about its future. To fully understand why many respected Christian leaders have spent decades warning people about Kenneth Copeland's ministry, it is important to look beyond the money and focus on what he actually teaches. While the financial controversies surrounding his ministry have received a great deal of attention over the years, many critics believe the teachings behind those financial practices are an even bigger concern. They argue that the ministry's beliefs are the foundation that supports everything else. According to these critics, once those teachings are accepted, the financial practices naturally follow. Kenneth Copeland has long been one of the best-known voices in what is called the Word of Faith movement. This movement has been influential for many years and has reached millions of people through television, books, conferences, and other forms of ministry. However, many Christian leaders have questioned where these teachings came from and whether they are supported by the Bible. The history of the movement goes back many years before Kenneth Copeland became well known. It traces back to a writer named E.W. Kenyon, who passed away in 1948. Kenyon wrote extensively about faith, healing, and spiritual authority. His writings later became highly influential within the Word of Faith movement. A preacher named Kenneth Hagin Sr. borrowed heavily from Kenyon's writings and later became one of the leading teachers of these beliefs. Hagin played a major role in spreading the movement and teaching many future ministers. Among those he personally mentored was a young Kenneth Copeland during the late 1960s. Before receiving Hagin's mentorship, Kenneth Copeland had already worked as Oral Roberts' personal pilot. His connection with Oral Roberts gave him exposure to another well-known healing ministry before he continued developing his own ministry under Hagin's influence. Over the years, some former insiders have also spoken publicly about the origins of these teachings. One of them is Costi Hinn, who is the nephew of Benny Hinn. Having grown up inside this same network of ministries, Costi Hinn has shared his own perspective after leaving that movement. In his book, Costi Hinn stated that the theological system taught throughout the movement rests largely on Kenneth Hagin's use of material taken from E.W. Kenyon. He even described it as plagiarism when discussing how Hagin built much of his teaching from Kenyon's earlier writings. According to critics, This raises serious questions about the foundation upon which the movement was built. They believe that if the original teachings themselves are questionable, then every doctrine developed from them deserves careful examination. Beyond the questions surrounding its history, Kenneth Copeland has also been criticized for specific teachings that have remained part of his ministry for more than 40 years. Two particular doctrines have attracted the strongest criticism from many mainstream Christian leaders. The first is commonly referred to by critics as the little gods teaching. During a 1987 broadcast of Believer's Voice of Victory, Kenneth Copeland stated that whenever he reads in the Bible where God says, "I am," he smiles and says that he is too. He expanded on this idea in one of his published books. There, he wrote that Adam was not simply a little like God, but was exactly like God. These statements have remained some of the most discussed teachings associated with his ministry. They have continued to draw criticism from pastors, theologians, and Christian scholars who believe they go beyond what the Bible teaches. Among those critics is Pastor John MacArthur. He has described this teaching as an entirely different gospel. Another well-known Christian apologist, Hank Hanegraaff, who became widely recognized as the Bible answer man, also addressed these teachings in his book, Christianity in Crisis. In that book, he argued that Kenneth Copeland Ministries displays the characteristics of a cult. These criticisms have been repeated by numerous Christian leaders over the years, making this doctrine one of the most debated parts of Kenneth Copeland's ministry. The second doctrine that has received strong criticism concerns Kenneth Copeland's teaching about what happened after the death of Jesus Christ. According to Copeland's teaching, the death of Jesus on the cross by itself was not enough to provide salvation. Instead, he teaches that after his crucifixion, Jesus descended into hell, where he was personally tortured by Satan. He further teaches that Jesus was born again in hell before defeating the devil through a spiritual victory. This teaching has generated significant controversy because many Christian leaders believe it conflicts with the traditional understanding of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. The sermon in which Kenneth Copeland presents this teaching continues to be available through the Kenneth Copeland Ministries website. Because of teachings like these, several respected Christian leaders have publicly challenged Kenneth Copeland's theology. Among them is R.C. Sproul, who was widely respected as a theologian and Bible teacher. Justin Peters has also been one of the strongest critics of these teachings. Together with others, these leaders have argued that Kenneth Copeland is presenting a different understanding of Jesus and a different gospel than the one taught in the Bible. For these critics, the concern is not limited to individual doctrines. They believe these teachings also help explain why financial giving occupies such an important place within the ministry. According to their argument, the theology and the financial practices are closely connected. They believe that once someone accepts the idea that believers are little gods, and also accepts the teaching that spoken words release spiritual power, another belief naturally follows. That belief is that giving money becomes a spiritual action, capable of producing supernatural financial rewards. Within this teaching, people are encouraged to believe that giving sacrificially, even to the point of sending their last paycheck, can activate a 100-fold return from heaven. Critics argue that this belief encourages supporters to continue giving large amounts of money with the expectation that God will multiply their finances in return. They believe this connection between theology and financial giving forms one of the central pillars of Kenneth Copeland's ministry. For decades, this combination of teachings has remained at the center of the debate surrounding Kenneth Copeland. While supporters continue to defend his ministry and his interpretation of Scripture, many Christian leaders remain convinced that these doctrines depart from historic Christian teaching. As a result, concerns about Kenneth Copeland have continued across multiple generations. They have involved not only questions about finances, but also serious disagreements over the theological beliefs that support the ministry itself. These debates have shaped the public discussion surrounding Kenneth Copeland for many years and continue to influence how his ministry is viewed by both supporters and critics. After examining the history of the movement, the origins of its teachings, the doctrines that have generated widespread criticism, and the connection many critics see between those doctrines and financial giving, one major question remains. It is the question that few people closely connected to Kenneth Copeland publicly discuss. What will become of all of this when Kenneth Copeland is no longer leading the ministry? The changing future of ministries and the questions surrounding its next chapter. For many years, Kenneth Copeland built what became one of the largest and most recognized prosperity ministries in the world. However, the organization he spent decades creating has been quietly shrinking for years, even though its broadcasts have carefully avoided drawing attention to that reality. Many casual viewers may not have noticed the changes, but several developments suggest that the ministry is not as large or as strong as it once appeared. One of the biggest signs came when the ministry's flagship television program, Believer's Voice of Victory, stopped airing on the Trinity Broadcasting Network in October of 2020. For many years, the program had been one of the ministry's most visible platforms, reaching audiences through one of the largest Christian television networks. Its departure marked an important change in how the ministry reached viewers. Other long-standing traditions have also been reduced over time. Conferences and conventions that once lasted nearly an entire week have been shortened into much smaller events. These gatherings were once major occasions that brought together large numbers of supporters, but their reduced length reflects another noticeable shift within the organization. The ministry's private airport in Tarrant County, Texas, has also changed. At one time, it represented the enormous growth and financial success of Kenneth Copeland Ministries. It stood as a powerful symbol of how far the ministry had expanded over the years. Today, however, only one runway remains usable. While the airport still exists, it no longer reflects the same level of activity that it once did. Questions have also been raised about the ministry's finances. In 2021, the appraised value of Kenneth Copeland's well-known parsonage dropped by nearly $4 million. The Trinity Foundation identified this change as highly suspicious and publicly questioned how such a large decrease occurred. Concerns about transparency have continued beyond that issue. The watchdog organization Ministry Watch currently gives Kenneth Copeland Ministries a transparency grade of F. It also assigns the ministry a donor confidence score of only 10 out of 100. Those ratings reflect serious concerns about how openly the ministry shares financial information with the public. Ministry Watch has also published very direct guidance for people considering financial support. Its official recommendation consists of only 2 words: withhold giving. That advice reflects the organization's position regarding the ministry's financial accountability and transparency. Another issue that has received attention is the number of family members employed by the ministry. According to Ministry Watch, more than 20 members of the Copeland family have received paychecks from Kenneth Copeland Ministries over the years. This has added to ongoing discussions about how leadership and financial responsibilities have been handled within the organization. At the same time, signs of leadership transition have become increasingly clear. Whether Kenneth Copeland openly discusses it from the stage or not, preparations for the ministry's future appear to be well underway. As of 2025, John Copeland returned to the position of Chief Executive Officer of Kenneth Copeland Ministries. His return places him in one of the organization's highest leadership roles as the ministry moves into its next phase. His older sister, Terry Copeland Pearsons, who serves as the senior pastor of Eagle Mountain International Church, has also been given an even greater responsibility. She has officially received the title of Chief Visionary Officer for the entire ministry. That appointment places her in a key position as the organization looks toward the future. Changes can also be seen in the public appearances of Gloria Copeland. Compared to previous years, she now appears on ministry broadcasts much less often. Supporters who have followed the ministry for decades have noticed that her role on camera has become far more limited than it once was. At the same time, the family's social media content has gradually begun presenting Gloria with language that reflects appreciation for her life, influence, and wisdom. Rather than focusing only on current ministry activities, many posts now carry the tone of honoring her long years of service. This gradual change has led some observers to believe that the ministry is preparing its audience for an eventual leadership transition. Looking beyond Kenneth Copeland Ministries alone, a broader pattern has also drawn attention over the years. Oral Roberts passed away at the age of 91. Kenneth Hagin Sr. passed away at the age of 86. Paul Crouch the founder of the Trinity Broadcasting Network, passed away in 2013. Eddie Long passed away of cancer in 2016. Each of these men founded or led major prosperity ministries that influenced millions of people over several decades. Yet each eventually passed away despite teachings within the prosperity movement that emphasized healing through faith. Supporters and critics alike have often pointed out that none of these well-known founders reached 120 years of age. None of them came close to that milestone. Kenneth Copeland himself has repeatedly told his audience that he believes he has a personal agreement with God to live until the year 2056. In December of 2025, Kenneth Copeland turned 89 years old. Although he continues preaching and remains active in ministry, his advancing age has naturally increased public discussion about what comes next. His health has also faced significant challenges. He has been hospitalized and his appendix ruptured, requiring emergency surgery. Those events reminded both supporters and critics that age eventually affects everyone, regardless of their public ministry or personal beliefs. The Copeland family has also experienced painful personal losses. They have mourned the death of a great-grandson, as well as the passing of a daughter-in-law. These family tragedies have unfolded alongside the continuing responsibilities of leading a large ministry. In recent years, Kenneth Copeland has also become much more selective about the interviews he accepts. Rather than appearing in lengthy conversations with journalists or interviewers who might raise difficult subjects, he now primarily participates in discussions with friendly podcasters who agree beforehand not to ask challenging questions. That change has not gone unnoticed. For many observers, it reflects a shift in how the ministry manages public appearances and difficult conversations. While supporters may see these interviews as opportunities to focus on faith and ministry, critics argue that important questions remain unanswered. Even with all of these developments, Kenneth Copeland continues preaching. His ministry continues operating. The organization remains active, and its broadcasts continue reaching audiences around the world. At the same time, many people believe that visible signs of change have become increasingly difficult to ignore. Leadership responsibilities are gradually shifting. Public appearances have changed. Long-standing traditions have been reduced. Financial questions continue to attract attention. Independent watchdog organizations continue expressing concerns about transparency. To many observers, these developments suggest that the ministry has entered a very different season from the one that defined its years of rapid growth. The organization still stands, but many believe that signs of strain have become more noticeable than they were in the past. Questions about leadership succession, financial accountability, public trust, and the ministry's future continue to grow. Another important reality is that many of the people who supported Kenneth Copeland Ministries during its years of greatest expansion are also growing older. The same generation that watched the ministry rise, contributed financially, attended conferences, and supported its projects has aged alongside Kenneth Copeland himself. As time passes, that creates additional questions about the ministry's future support base. The biggest question now is not simply whether Kenneth Copeland Ministries will continue operating. It is whether the organization can maintain the same level of influence, support, and visibility after its founder is no longer leading it personally. Leadership transitions are often among the most challenging moments for any organization, especially one that has been closely identified with a single individual for many decades. Kenneth Copeland has been the public face of the ministry throughout its history. As leadership responsibilities increasingly shift to the next generation, many people are watching closely to see how the organization adapts. The ministry still has established leaders, ongoing programs, and a worldwide audience. Even so, discussions about its future continue to grow as Kenneth Copeland approaches his 90th year. Whether the ministry experiences continued stability or significant change remains a question that many supporters, critics, and longtime observers continue to ask. As the organization moves further into its next chapter, those questions are likely to become even more important in the years ahead. What do you think about Kenneth Copeland? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Before you go, be sure to click on the video shown on your screen.